Shalom. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin with lighting Shabbat candles, and I hope that you have candles at home and you can join along with us. Remember, the blessing is Asher Kirchanu b'mitzvot havitzvot la hadlik ner shel Shabbat, to kindle the flame of Shabbat. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'adlik ner shel Shabbat. Life happens. We have one flame and the other candle didn't catch the flame. Sometimes life happens. By the way, have you ever asked yourself, why do we light 2 candles when we light candles for Friday night, minimum of 2? There are some traditions wherein you light perhaps for the number of people in your immediate family. There are a number of explanations as to why traditionally people light 2 candles on Shabbat. The first is that if you look at the Torah and you do a quick skim from memory, you remember that there are 2 sets of the 10 great words. The first is in the book of Exodus, and the second is in the book of Deuteronomy. And it's in those 2 sets of the Big 10 that we learn about observing Shabbat in the first place. And so one understanding is that we light 1 candle representing Shemot or Exodus, and we light 1 candle representing Devarim or Deuteronomy. That may be true. It's a lovely idea because those 2 loci are the sources of Shabbat itself. Another is perhaps loosely based upon an event in this week's Torah reading. And we begin the Torah reading in Breshit, and that's the creation of all humanity. And you remember that Adam and Eve were created just before Shabbat. Ta-da! And so perhaps one candle represents Adam, we're all males, and the other represents Eve, we're all females. And there are other traditions as well. But the point is that we do our best, and sometimes our best works, and sometimes our best is just not quite up to our own standards, which gives us room for next time. For now, join me, the Shalom Aleichem, on page number 5 if you have the Siddur. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Ashoret, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, malachei shalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech, malachei amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barachoni l'shalom, malachei shalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, malachei shalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei amlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Angels have come, angels have been with you, and now because of your home, your openness to becoming part of our network of homes, angels are comfortable in your place, and they're slowly leaving and moving on to the next home. You are giving the angels the necessary momentum to travel to the next home for Shabbat. And now we turn to the Lechuna Ranana on page number 11. Page number 11, Lechuna Ranana. And by the way, I'm sure by now you've noticed that we're back in the chapel again temporarily. I've missed the chapel while we've been in the big sanctuary these past few months. The chapel has a warmth and an intimacy. The sanctuary, of course, is beautiful and large and grand, but the chapel has a softness, and I miss the chapel. And so with Gadiel's help, we're back in the chapel for this Shabbat tonight and tomorrow. And yes, it is true, next week, that is the weekend of October 8th, we are opening again to those who are masked and vaccinated, coming in person. We'll be back in the sanctuary to allow for a lot of social distancing between people, all wearing masks and vaccinated, as we've mentioned before. And because of that, I just wanted to say Shabbat Shalom to you from the chapel before we go back into the sanctuary. L'chun Ranana, come on, let's sing together. We're on page number 11. L'chun Ranana, Ranana, Ladonai Naria, Naria, Letzor Yishenu. L'chun Ranana, Ranana, Ladonai Naria, Naria, Letzor Yishenu. Nekad mafanav, Nekad mafanav, Nekad mafanav betoda. Bismirot, Bismirot, Naria lo. Bismirot, Bismirot, Naria lo. Bismirot, Bismirot, Naria lo. Bismirot, Bismirot, Naria lo. And on the English side, it's the third stanza on page number 11. Come then, let us bow and kneel, because we've been singing. Let us bow and kneel, let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai, who formed us. The top of page 12. For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hands. If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Merivah, like that time at Massah in the desert, when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are a people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way. So in anger I swore, they would not enter my rest. And we have an opportunity to learn from that generation, to not be hard-hearted, and to go forward and to have access to God's rest. We do so together. And here's the song, Hine Matov by Sue Hurwitz. Behold, let's go together. Hine Matov.
Hine Matov, Hine Matov, Umanaim, Umanaim, Shever Achim, Shever Achim, Gam Yachad. Hine Matov, Hine Matov, Umanaim, Umanaim, Shever Achim, Shever Achim, Gam Yachad. As we travel along the path of our lives, it's the people we meet who can change umanayim shevet achim gam yachad hine ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad
Shiru on page 13 of the English side. Sing to Adonai a new song. Sing to Adonai all the earth. Sing to Adonai, praise God's name. Day after day, tell of God's deliverance. Tell the nations of God's glory. Speak of God's wonders among all peoples. For Adonai is great, surely to be praised, more revered than any and other. For the gods of the nations are man-made idols, but Adonai fashioned the very heavens. Grandeur and glory are God's honor guard. Strength and joy where God is found. Offer to Adonai, peoples of the world. Offer to Adonai honor and strength. Offer to Adonai the honor due God's name. Bring a gift of thanksgiving and enter God's presence. The last stanza on page 14. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, V'tzagel haaretz. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, V'tzagel haaretz. Yeramayam, 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 Omalo, Yeramayam, 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 Omalo, Yeramayam, 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 Omalo, Yeramayam, 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 Omalo, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, V'tzagel haaretz. Yeramayam, 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 Omalo, Yeramayam, 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 Omalo, Yeramayam, 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 Omalo, Yeramayam, 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 Omalo. And the heart of this piece is joy, and of seeing ourselves as being part of a great whole. Each one of us a constituent element. You and I are as significant as the trees and the oceans and the heavens and the mountains. We're all part of creation. And what do you and I bring? We're not mountains. We're not vast caverns. We're not waves. What do we bring? We bring our hearts, our love. And the next song is by Beth Schaefer. It's Lev Belev, which literally means heart beating within heart, or heart beating next to heart and heart beating together. Lev Belev.
Circle of love that has no end.
giant clap of thunder from the sky. But in singing songs with you, it is the most attentive ear, those that God dwells between the words for us to find. Lave, belave, heart and heart, where my hand stops, your hand starts, in a circle of love that has no end. Belave, belave, heart and heart, God's been with us from the start. In this complicated world, you'll need a friend, and so I'll keep you close to me. Lave, belave. When we yearn for God's touch, we hope all pain will go away. In an instant, in a moment, be renewed. But as we work together toward that sacred, peaceful day, we learn that God heals each of us through me and you. Lave, belave, heart and heart, when my hand stops, your hand starts, in a circle of love that has no end. Belave, belave, heart and heart, God's been with us from the start. In this complicated world, you'll need a friend, so I'll keep you close to me. God will be with us, as together we will stay. Lave, belave.
On page number 19, Adonai reigns, nations tremble. The one enthroned with the Kruvim makes the world quake. Adonai is great in Sion above all nations. They shall acknowledge your name, saying, Great, awe-inspiring Holy One. A sovereign strength lies in the love of justice. A sovereign strength lies in the love of justice. That never goes out of style. And you, O God, forge the paths of truth, judging Jacob righteously and justly. Exalt Adonai, our God. Bow down before God, the Holy One. We use the word Baruch often, and we speak of, in a few moments, Abdul Kharidi, Borchu, calling out and blessing God. But within the Hebrew tradition, when we bless, we're also becoming blessed. What does that mean? To bless someone else and to become blessed. It means that when you and I are aware of the soulful strength that we each have, and we focus that in a loving and respectful and honoring manner, not only do we affect and transform the person in front of us and the relationship that we have, but in a way we're transformed. By Rick Recht. This is a contemporary piece about blessing and becoming blessed.
אנחנו are blessed to have time to understand. We are blessed to have choice, to live where we want to live. We are blessed to have voices, to sing this song of Nachnu, Vorachim, Lavod, Ohavim, Nachnu, Vorachim, Lavod, Ohavim. We are blessed to have life, live in freedom. We are blessed to have hearts to love each other. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nachnu, Vorachim, Lavod, Ohavim, Nachnu, Vorachim, Lavod, Ohavim, Nachnu, Vorachim, Lavod, Ohavim, Nachnu, Vorachim, Lavod, Ohavim.
No surprise, the song is Mevorachim, plural. We're all in this together. Jewish life teaches that we are all part of a shared life, a shared experience. And the most common terms in Hebrew are Anachnu, Otanu, Kidshanu, Avinu, Malkenu. Anytime you hear that sound nu at the end of a word, you know we're talking about all of us as a community, as a group. No one is left out. Singing Lechadodi, we're on page 23. A new melody. We haven't done this melody in quite some time, but it's contemporary. It's a Craig Talman piece. It's the first two stanzas on page 23. Then he skips to Hit Orari, which is the middle stanza on 24. And then it's the last stanza, the Bowie, on page 25, for which we rise. It's a fun melody. Let's just sing along, Lechadodi.
Alecha dodi, alikarat kala, apene Shabbat, nekabela. Alecha dodi, alikarat kala, apene Shabbat, nekabela. Alecha dodi, alikarat kala, apene Shabbat. Nekabela Alecha dodi Likarat kala Apnei Shabbat Nekabela Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Kishmianu el hamiuchad Adonai echad Ushmo echad L'shem u'tiferet v'litila Alecha dodi Likarat kala Apnei Shabbat Nekabela Alecha dodi Likarat kala Apnei Shabbat Nekabela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha Ki mekor ha'beracha Mirosh mikedem nesucha Sof maaseh b'machshava tila Alecha dodi Likarat kala Apnei Shabbat Nekabela Alecha dodi Likarat kala Apnei Shabbat Nekabela דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת, נקבלה לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני שבת, נקבלה בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה בתוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה.
That means come on in. Let's all sing together welcoming Shabbat. And now, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, the psalm on page 27 in honor of Shabbos herself. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, Olezamer l'shimcha elyon, Olezamer l'shimcha elyon, Lahagid baboker chastecha, Ve'emunatcha balelot, Alei asor v'alei navel, Alei higayon bechinor, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, Olezamer l'shimcha elyon, Olezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simchtani Adonai b'folecha, b'maaseh yadecha aranen, magalu maasecha Adonai mod, amku machshavotecha, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, Olezamer l'shimcha elyon, Olezamer l'shimcha elyon. Continuing in the English, the next page. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady. For my ears listen and hear. My ears know. Tzadik katamay yifrach. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age, the righteous remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. This is a message of confidence woven into Shabbat, which means twice a week, because it's Friday night and Saturday morning. Some Sidurim actually say this psalm twice on Shabbos morning. So 3 times a week, you and I get a little bit of an antidote against that atmosphere, that culture of hostility and conflict. And the message from the Psalm for Shabbat is that you and I, as righteous people, contribute actively to this world. We are making this world better by our caring and by our devotion to Torah and to its message and to its principles. Oh, dinuvum besebo desheni vranim you lagi keshonetru lola tabo. And now rising, turning to the Borchu on page 39b, the Borchu. Baruch hu et Adonai amavorach. Baruch Adonai amavorach le'olam voed. And we were seated, the opening bracha on the English side. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space. You completed your work of creation on the seventh day, calling this day from one evening to the next the holy Shabbat, and gave this day of rest in all its holiness to your people Israel, creator of day and night, ruling light before darkness and darkness from light, making day pass and bringing on the evening, distinguishing day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Living and ever-present God, may your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. El Chai v'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Alen Olam Voed. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Aravim. And on page number 40, Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Avta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadita. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, B'shachveinu v'kumeinu, Nasiach b'chukecha, V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, U'v'mitzvotecha, Li'olam voed. Ki em chayenu v'orech yameinu v'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla v'yavotecha tasim imenu la'olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. The Shema. Join me, the Shema, on page number 41. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha v'hayo hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'alektecha v'aderech uv'shachbecha v'kumecha u'keshartam la'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha. A moment of silence on page number 42. Adonai Elohechem emet. On the English side, page number 44. Then Moses, Miriam, and the people Israel joyfully sang to you, Umalchuto beratzon kiblu aleim Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael L'cha anu shira b'simcha rabba v'amru chulam. Who is like you, Adonai, among the mighty? Who is like you, adorned in holiness, revered in praise, working wonders? Mi chamocha poelim Adonai Mi kamocha Nedar b'kodesh Noratilot Osef elem. Your children recognized your sovereignty as you split the sea before Moses. This is my God, they responded, and said, Adonai will reign forever and ever. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokayam lifnei Moshe, zeli anu v'yamro, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. And so it is written, Adonai has rescued Jacob and redeemed him from the hand of those more powerful than he. Baruch atah Adonai, who redeemed the people Israel. V'ne'emar ki fadar Adonai et Yaakov ugalo mi'at chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. And tonight, again we say the Hashkivenu, thinking not only of ourselves, and members of our synagogue, and members of the community of Mobile, and people throughout the state of Alabama, and across the United States, and all throughout the world. We're thinking of everyone who, for any one of a number of reasons, may not sleep comfortably tonight. And take hold of this as a tzedakah message, that you're praying that somebody else who normally doesn't sleep well can have one night's calm slumber. That's your prayer. It's a private prayer within the private prayer of all of ours for somebody you don't even know. May you, O God, spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the people of Israel, and over Jerusalem. Ufros olenu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'yakol mo Yisrael, v'yal Yerushalayim. And in a moment, the Vishamru, a melody that we haven't sung in a little while. It's the top of page number 46. It's a chorale, Vishamru.
Shabbat, Edorotam Merito.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבו, אמן. במדרכה בחייך וביומך ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב במהרה, אמן. יהי שמי רבו מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה, יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה בריחו לעילוי מקום ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה תאמירן מעלמא v'mero, amen. And now we rise for the Silent Amida, the traditional text, page 47 through 52. Or you might just take a few moments and remember what it's like to be in our small, gentle, Hamisha chapel and bring your prayers into this room. Bring your prayers and your thoughts and your voice, your call of prayer, of blessing, of something else, of Shabbat, of Shabbos, into this room. We're waiting for that voice. Shabbos, we're in the opening of the Torah. The first volume of the Torah is Bereshis or Bereshit, which literally means at the beginning of. And as you know, we read a Torah reading every single week on Shabbos morning. And Bereshis or Bereshit, which is the name of the whole book of Genesis, is also the name of the first weekly parsha. And tomorrow we'll be reading a small excerpt from the beginning of everything. How often do you and I stop and pause and think about the opening of Torah? Torah could have been in any one of a number of ways. But Torah begins describing God as a gardener. And God, with great detail, arranges and configures the earth, and then the water source, and then the soil, and then all the many different types of plants, and then the animals. And at every single stage God looks at the handiwork that God has done, and God says, Tov, it's good. And after all of the beginning, all the beds have been set and all the plants have been put in, and the irrigation system, the sprinklers, and all the animals, then God places people within the garden. At each step of this construction phase, God views every bit of effort as worthwhile, as worthy, as good, and as valued. That's how Torah begins. Torah doesn't begin by saying, thou shalt put on a yarmulke, or thou shalt go to synagogue on a Shabbos morning, or thou shalt read Hebrew. Torah begins with arraying and constructing the entire universe as a series of beautiful elements, all woven one into each other. And all of us, you and me, are essential to the operation of the beauty of this garden. And ask yourself, and perhaps you're involved in gardening, what do gardeners do? They spend a great deal of time and effort putting their hands into the soil, getting their fingers dirty, clearing out weeds, making sure everything is just right, adding the water, perhaps the fertilizer and the food. And God is described as a gardener of everything, including you and me. And after all of the gardening has been established, when God creates you and me, Adam and Chava, that's Adam and Eve in Hebrew, Adam and Chava. As I've said many times, God breathes into them. And you know by now that the Hebrew word breath, nasham, gives rise to the Hebrew word neshama, which means soul. And the soul which God breathes into each and every one of us is a shared breath of God. It's a shared breath. It's not one time fits all. It's a shared breath. That means that every time you and I are breathing and we're attending to not only a breath, oxygen and carbon dioxide, attending to our soul, we should also be thinking that God is breathing in tandem with each and every one of us. And that's a gift of the Jewish mindset to the entire world. No other tradition teaches that God breathes in and out along every single person on the planet with love and gentleness, the way a gardener minds the plants, the flowers, the landscaping. And I mentioned this from our small chapel, and you see the Torah table, which has been empty of reading Torah for many, many months, and we've been in the sanctuary, and we've read symbolically because we haven't had a minyan. But many of us are very much at home here in this chapel and at this stender, as I call it in Yiddish. And many of us are familiar with this large card which has the blessings for having an aliyah. But many of us have forgotten just a little bit because we haven't been in the building for almost a year and a half. And some people are a little gun-shy, a little reluctant about reading Hebrew or even transliteration in front of the community, and they decline an aliyah. And so now, a phrase which calls out, and it's a phrase chanted 8 times every time you have a minyan on Shabbos morning. V'chayei olam nata b'socheinu, which means, and the eternal life of the universe planted within all of us. There's that term, planting. It's echoing the Garden of Eden description in this very Torah reading. And we recite this every time we have a Shabbos and the Torah is read. And every person is calling out to the entire community, remember that God has literally planted the eternal life of the universe within us. What does that mean? That the gardener of all reality takes the time and the effort to plant within you the spirit of eternity. You are the bearer of the spirit of eternity, the Chayei Olam, the life force of all reality. That's within you, nurtured within you, and also guarded by you. God the gardener, the Chayei Olam Natah Besochenu, Natah's plant, it's a verb. God is a gardener that entrusts you with the care of the eternal spirit of life which spans the entire universe and beyond within your own daily aspects. So my question for all of us today is, now that you and I know so much about what it means to be part of the gardening activity of God and to bear the breath of God, which parallels our own breath, and to also know that we are guardians of the eternal life force of the universe, how will you go into the world tomorrow? How will you conduct yourself in tomorrow's reality when we first open the Breshit, and the next day and the next as we begin this brand new year? You and I have an opportunity to bring beauty of a spiritual nature, a soulful power into the world with our behavior, with our conduct, reminding ourselves that when we walk out into the world and we breathe, we're not breathing alone. God is breathing along with us. And as a result of that, we bear the beauty of the eternal spirit of life within each and every one of us. Let's not waste it. May we have a blessed Shabbat. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully very soon. Next week, masked and vaccinated, of course. Next week, looking forward to seeing you. Kaddish Shalem, and then Kiddush and Motzi, and perhaps you have Kiddush and Motzi and you can join in with us in your own homes. Kaddish is on page number 54. Yitkara b'karash me'rabamin be'amal shvimeramin yehesh me'rabam mevarach la'olam li'al me'al maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'dosei v'darav shmei kudusha brechu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tishbechata v'nechamata damro me'vavimeramin titkabel tzvimeramin Amen. Yishlimero. Amen. O session mamavi yase shalom. Olefimero. Amen. Kiddush is on page number 55. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei parei hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshana b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ava uv'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim Kivanu V'acharta V'otanu Kidashta Mikol Amim V'Shabbat Kodshecha V'Ahava Uvaratzon Hinchaltanu Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. You might have a piece of bread at home, and perhaps we can say a hamotzi together. As I mentioned before, I'm encouraging people to wash their hands. It's called netilas yadayim, if so able. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Aleinu on page number 56. Page 56, Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach laton hakol lateit gedula liotzer breishit shelo asanu kugoyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Noteh Shamayim V'Yosei Haaretz U'Moshav Yekaro B'Shamayim Mimahal U'Shchinatu Zo Begavei Meromim Hu Eloheinu Einod Emet Malkeinu Evezulatom Kakatu b'torato v'yadata yom v'shevota el levavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachat einod. Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad U'Shemo Echad. And the Mourner's Kaddish in a moment on page number 58. On page 58, the Mourner's Kaddish, we remember with great love Sam Lassner, Hyman Levinson, Max Kramer, Morris Malkov, Frida Maisel Abers, Pinchas Loeb, Bertha Frisch, Anise Gurwitch Miller, Harriet Rips Powers, Rose Fuchs, Thelma Rygrod, Barbara Casson, Minnie Meisler, Sigmund Horwitz, remembering with love, Peter John Charnetsky, Eva Chasson, and those recently whom we've lost: Jerry Berger, Yetta Lee, Nancy Howell, and perhaps you know someone recently in your own life, and you might mention that person's name aloud in your own home. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Amen. Be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chaye chon u'v'yomei chon u'v'chaye t'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach la'olam olalmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha b'rechu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alma v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim olenu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom olenu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. When we're saying olenu v'al kol Yisrael, we're literally saying, may there be peace upon us and upon everyone in Israel, which means that you, in your own prayers of mourning, are thinking about somebody else. You've been raised, you've been schooled to not think only of your own needs, but to think of someone else. And in the moment of perhaps extreme grief during Yortzeit, or immediate loss, or perhaps a little bit of the sorrow has faded, you're still thinking not only of yourself, but of someone else. And those Jewish people, part of our community in other countries, are saying the exact same words. And in their moments of loss and sorrow, they're thinking about you and me. And that is comforting. A few quick reminders, and then we'll conclude with Oseh Shalom. Tomorrow, Shabbos morning, yes, we'll be in the chapel, well, virtually that is. And then tomorrow night, 7:30, Havdalah, Alabama Community Virtual Havdalah. It's on Zoom, as you know. And then Monday is Tanakh study, and Tuesday is the adult Hebrew class, and also the Spirit. Both of them are on Zoom. Tanakh is on Zoom, adult Hebrew is on Zoom, Spirit is on Zoom. The Spirit segment at 5 o'clock on Tuesday is why is having a mezuzah important? You'll find out if you come to Spirit. And Thursday is the book club on Zoom. That's at 3, and story time for the toddlers is at 5:30. And a week from today is Tat Shabbat. And yes, a reminder, we're coming back into the building, masked, vaccinated, social distancing in the big sanctuary. And if you have any questions, contact me. And for now, we'll conclude with our prayer for shalom. Oseh shalom b'mromav, o yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imro, amen. Hey, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, hey, yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. Ve'imru amen. For you to join us has brought shalom into my heart, into the heart of Gadiel. And we're grateful. May you continue to see yourself as a source of bracha, a source of blessing in our world. Lihitraot until we see each other again. Shabbat Shalom.